It's been about a month since I used the Steam Deck, and impressions so far have been great. I'm amazed by the performance the console has given me, and games that have ran terribly on Nintendo Switch run beautifully on the Steam Deck. My only critique has been the fan. It goes off 24/7, and even when I'm playing the lower end games, the fan still goes off. Though aside from that little issue, I love the Steam Deck. It has been basically a Switch replacement for me in regards to third-party games. And today, we're taking a look at some Dragon Quest games and seeing how they run on the console. I'm pretty sure most of you guys are curious about how Dragon Quest games run on the Steam Deck, and seeing how the 3DS is now discontinued, we definitely need a brand new handheld to replace this 3DS when it comes down to playing Dragon Quest games. And the Nintendo Switch is definitely taking its time when it comes down to mainline Dragon Quest games on the console that has it. But you also may be wondering, seeing how I also cover Sonic games, why I'm not covering the Sonic games on Steam Deck. And the reason's actually simple. There's a great video already out there from my boy JadenXV on that particular topic. So check out that video. But other than that, let's dive right in. So before we start taking a look into the Dragon Quest games, we need to take a look at the rankings Valve has placed on games on their playability, to which there are 4 rankings in total. The first is verified. Valve has determined that the game is fully functional and playable on the console. The second is playable. The game works, but you may need to use a keyboard or there's some compatibility issues on the games. The third is unsupported. The game doesn't work or has some major compatibility issues. And finally, unknown. Valve is still testing the game and hasn't checked to see if the game runs on the Steam Deck. So those are our rankings from Valve, and out of the 5 Dragon Quest games on Steam, 2 are verified, 1 is unsupported, and 2 are unknown. Let's start with the verified games. The 2 games are Dragon Quest XI Vanilla version and Dragon Quest XI S. And quite honestly, I don't really want to consider them 2 games, as they're basically the same game. The only difference is one looks better and the other one has more content. So for this analysis, I'll be treating them as the same game, only pointing out differences when needed. And for the most part, both games run great on the Steam Deck. It's only when you get to highly popular areas where the game does dip in frame rate. Though I haven't seen the games dip below 30. But I have noticed that the vanilla version of Dragon Quest XI does dip lower in frame rate in comparison to the S version, though both versions don't dip below 30 FPS. This is an instance where I would say if you want to have better visuals, cap the frame rate to 30 FPS if you want to have a smooth experience. If you don't care about smooth experience and you just want to make sure you get 60 FPS, then lower down your settings. Aside from that, despite the uneven frame rate if you're trying to reach 60 FPS, both Dragon Quest XI Vanilla and Dragon Quest XI S perform great on the Steam Deck, though performance on these games is just scratching the surface. We can also install mods seeing how these are the PC version of the games, and Steam Deck has a desktop mode we can access. You can go to Nexus Mod, download them, and drag the files into the packs folders, and there we go, the games are modded. I have the mod where you can change the characters to any of the NPCs in the game, and it looks great on my Steam Deck right here. And just because of mods, for me, the best portable version of Dragon Quest XI is the Steam Deck version, just because of mods. Now moving on to the unsupported game, and that is Dragon Quest Builders 2. And keep in mind, even though Valve states a game is unsupported on the Steam Deck, you can still download the game and run it yourself. And even then, some unsupported games still run on the system. Just look at me running Sonic Adventure DX. Though that's not the case when playing Dragon Quest Builders 2. The game instantly crashed right when I pressed the play button. It doesn't even load the developer copyrights. The only thing that I could load is the config tool, and there's nothing on there that can help me make the game run. But I guess it's not surprising seeing how this is a PC port done by Koei Tecmo, and they're very notorious for bad PC ports. Moving on to the unknown games, and it's Dragon Quest Heroes 1 and 2, and I was pretty sure they weren't going to run seeing how these are ports done by Koei Tecmo. But to my surprise, they actually did run on my Steam Deck. Though the FMVs barely load, and they had this broadcast interrupted bug when played. And performance, even running on the lowest settings, is subpar. At the very least, I could say performance was above 30 FPS at the very least, and in comparison to the Switch version, that's a lot better than 15 FPS on Switch. Besides that, the performance leaves a lot to be desired. So we've talked about the official releases of Dragon Quest games on Steam, and how they run on the Steam Deck. So it's now time to talk about emulation and how these games run on the Steam Deck. Getting emulators on the Steam Deck is relatively easy as you need to go to the desktop mode, launch the Discovery Shop, and download the emulators. Though depending on the emulator, you will need to get the BIOSes for the emulator. I'm not going to talk about games that run on the NES, SNES, or Game Boy because it should be obvious those emulators run with no hitches at all. So we're looking at 4 emulators: DuckStation, PCSX2, Melon DS, and Citra. And see how the Steam Deck handles these emulators. Let's start with DuckStation, a PS1 emulator. with some graphical enhancements like doubling the internal resolution and using a widescreen hack. And as you can see, the game runs great with everything I thrown at it. As you can tell, there's great performance, no frame rate dips, everything runs consistent. Moving on, we have PCSX2, a PS2 emulator. And this emulator is not the best out there for PS2 games, but it's the only one we have, and if you want games to perform the best, you need to jump through hoops to make sure they run perfectly. In the case of the game we're looking at, it's Dragon Quest VIII. You need to go to the settings and tinker with them just so you can have shadows displayed correctly. And after all that tinkering, the Steam Deck actually handles these settings perfectly. Shadows are displayed as they should, and I haven't noticed any frame dips yet on the emulation, as I'm very impressed with the results so far with the PCSX2 on the Steam Deck. Next up we have Melon DS, a Nintendo DS emulator, and as you can see, we're running Dragon Quest IX on here with some graphical enhancements, and it works great. But you will need to tinker with some settings first, if you don't want to deal with some frame rate hitches throughout the game. But once that's taken care of, the game runs smoothly and nothing bad to report. Finally we have Citra, a 3DS emulator. Seeing how this is a newer emulator and the 3DS emulation hasn't been perfected yet, you are going to deal with some FPS drops and some stuttering. But bearing that in mind, we have Dragon Quest VIII again on Citra, and once again things look great on here, but the performance can be a little bit stuttery at times. We're going to notice some hitches in frame rate and some occasional stuttering at times. But I'm pretty sure that's not due to the Steam Deck not handling this well, it's mostly just due to the emulation not being perfect just yet, as I do encounter the same stuttering on my own PC. So we're still getting great performance overall, as the emulation's on par with high-end PCs, and that leaves me very impressed. So overall, the Steam Deck is a great handheld. But what do you guys think? Do you guys think the Steam Deck handles Dragon Quest games as well as I do? I'd like to hear them in the comments down below. Plus, don't forget to leave this video a like as well. Thank you guys for watching, and I hope to see you guys on the next one. Take care.